I want to start by calling out the idea that gets a lot of buyers in trouble. The idea is this: I can buy a good business far away, use the bank's money, use other people's money, hire a manager, and sit back and let them run the business while I collect the profit. On paper, that sounds smart. That sounds great. On social media posts, that's all the rage. It's viral right now in some places. And in real life, that plan works until the first real problem shows up. When it does, you'll learn very fast who's actually holding the risk in this scenario. I've watched smart buyers lose sleep, savings, and peace of mind from deals that looked clean on a spreadsheet, but were fragile in real life. Buying a business far away, loading it with a bunch of debt, and hoping to run it hands off does not lower risk, it stacks it against you. I'm not against buying out of state. I'm not against having managers run it. And I'm not even against leverage. What I'm against is stacking all three of those before you understand what they actually do to risk. I've been involved in over 600 transactions. I see what gets pitched online. I also see what quietly breaks buyers a year or two later after they get convinced by some social media guru to buy a business out of state and let a manager run it. My goal here is simple. I want you to understand where the risk really lives before you sign up for it. Let's start with the part most buyers underestimate. When you sign a loan, especially for an SBA loan, the risk does not stop at the business. You're personally guaranteeing that loan. That means if the business struggles, the bank does not just look at the business, they look to you, your credit, your savings, and in some cases, your home. That's not just fear talking, that's actual SBA contract. The loan payment is due every month, whether the business is doing great or whether it's barely getting by. So let's put some simple numbers to this. Say your loan payment is $25,000 a month. That business is doing fine after, let's say, it's making $40,000 a month after all the expenses, but before the debt payment. So out of that $40,000, you've got to pay the loan at $25,000 a month. Now, let's say profit drops by $10,000 a month because of a staff issue or a customer loss or seasonality to the business, whatever it happens to be. You didn't just lose the profit, you lost your safety margin. If that gap lasts for 6 months, that pressure doesn't just stay inside the business, it shows up at home. That's why leverage feels fine early, but it feels heavy later on when it really matters. Now, add to the mix. Distance doesn't just make it harder to visit, distance delays the truth. When you own a business that's nearby, you feel problems early. You hear and you can feel employee frustration. You can see customer tension. You notice when the standards start to slip, as an example. But when the business is far away, you rely on reports. Reports show numbers, not the mood. By the time numbers move, the problem is already expensive. You're on the lag end of it, not the lead end of those problems. Small problems caught early are cheap, but late problems cost real money, and distance creates delay, multiplies damage, and that's the risk. Now, here's the framework I want you to remember if you're thinking about buying a business: control, cash, and consequence. Remember those three C's. Control: who actually runs the day to day business? Cash: who controls the money, approvals, and spending? And consequences: who pays the price if things go wrong? In many absentee deals, all three of these are split badly to your disadvantage. You have the consequence, the manager has the control, and cash often sits in between with weak oversight. This brings us to the part where buyers really should say out loud and think through this. When you rely on a manager, your family finances are in their hands. Your loan is personally guaranteed by you, by a spouse. Your credit is on the line. Sometimes your home is exposed. Meanwhile, the manager usually has a paycheck and very little downside. Ask yourself this question honestly: do you truly know this person, this manager, well enough to risk your family's financial future on them doing their job really well every single week in, week out. Not hope that they do their job, not assume that they do their job, but actually know. Because if they drift, if they disengage, if they cut corners, the cost doesn't land on them first, it lands on you. This is why I tell buyers the real risk in absentee deals is not the business, it's the human running the business. Now, this doesn't mean managers are bad. Means trust alone is not the system you should rely on. If you're going to rely on a manager, you need controls that work even when trust fails. That means clear cash controls. That means spending limits that require owner approval. That means daily or weekly reporting that you actually review. That means separating who runs operations from who controls the money, just to name a few. If one person can run the business and move the cash without oversight, you're not the owner, you're just the guarantor of the business. Let's talk about the upside versus the downside math here, because this is where buyers talk themselves into bad trades. Your downside is fixed. The loan payment is fixed in the sense that it doesn't go away until it's paid off, but it's variable. Often the SBA rates are variable. The guarantee, your personal guarantee, is fixed. The stress that comes with the business and operating and servicing the debt is fixed, but your upside is not. Your upside depends on execution, and you may not control that day to day if you're relying on someone else out of state. That's a mismatch. Full risk with partial control. That's a recipe for a potential disaster that you have very little control over. And I want to be clear here, absentee ownership can work. I've seen it work all the time. But when it works, it usually comes after local ownership, deep understanding, strong systems, and deal terms that share risk instead of dumping it all on the buyer. The safest absentee owners almost never start absentee. And that's a big mindset a shift if you're looking at buying a business. You don't start off as an absentee owner typically. They owned the business first, they operated the business first, they learned it first, they broke things, they fixed them, they built controls. Only then did they start to slowly distance themselves as it became safer for the owner operator to move themselves out of the business. When buyers skip this step, they confuse convenience with safety. So let me speak to two types of buyers watching this. If you're a first time buyer, hands off should not be your first goal. Your first goal should be understanding. Learn the business close before you try and run it from afar. If you're an experienced buyer looking to scale, distance can work, but only when control, cash, and consequences are aligned on purpose, not by hope, not by just relying on the manager because the manager did a good job for the previous seller who worked for him for 20 years. That's hope. That's not a strategy. So before you buy an out of state deal, I want you to run one simple test. If the business struggles for 12 months, what part of my personal life gets pulled into that struggle? If the answer is your savings, your credit, your home, your peace of mind, your marriage, then the deal needs stronger controls, better terms, or better price. I'll leave you with this thought. If a deal only works when everything goes right, it's not a good deal. Remember, distance and devotion matter. So think through, if you're a first time buyer, plan properly. If you found this video helpful, I run a free school community with over 30 hours of free video content education where I outline what buyers can do to find, analyze, and close properly, ideally, locally, on their first business. And it's totally free. So if you enjoyed this video, check out the link in the description and join my community. Thanks.